Been working up until 5 and 6 a.m. in the past few nights. I even did a live stream last night until like 5:30 in the morning. I have to apologize for being so busy. Past 3 or 4 days, actually 4 days, have been some of the busiest in my entire life, so I have to apologize for that. I spent half of today working outside with a pole saw, which is basically a miniature chainsaw at the end of a stick, clearing off of the trees that are hanging over my car, and also too endangering in case of the next storm. That was a lot of fun. Not really. There are days like that. I have like a dozen or more where there's like a whole week there where you're just so busy that, you just kind of collapse at the end of the day. Some people every day for them is like that. My scale over there that I basically never jump on anymore says I've lost over 25 pounds, and I know what you're thinking. Well, 25 pounds is a drop in the bucket. You need to lose another 40. I need to lose more than that, but I've been sweating my guts outside tonight, and I've been eating nothing but whole foods, which I generally do, 85% of the time. I wanted to talk about utopia. One of the neat things about excess is that it can never be fulfilled, and utopia in the human condition. Some serious issues with that, and once again I apologize for having been away. I got a bunch of mosquito bites on my legs for being outside all day. I was reading through all the last of the comments that I haven't been able to look at in the past 36 hours, and it's amazing, the human condition and the things that we actually strive for. We attempt to make things more simple, and we've actually complicated life. The truth is this, and it's undeniable, that if everybody lived to be like over 200 years old and we never had to work, everybody had a beautiful significant other and 2 children that didn't require any work to upkeep, and we all had beautiful houses and we could just leisure the day away, everybody would be as miserable as the super rich, super beautiful, shallow, empty, hollow individuals out in Hollywood and countless other places. We're all trying to achieve the unachievable, and we're trying to find it objectively. This search for utopia is completely fruitless and impossible. There's an ancient passage that exists in both ancient Egyptian and ancient Pali and Prakrit, and they all basically the same thing. Would that I were many. And this is no different than a statement of excess. And excess is bottomless. It can never be fulfilled. It is always desire for other and more. And when we have it, we still obsess over it because we want to keep it rather than losing it. We, of course, always lose it in the end. I think Alexander the Great, right before he died, made orders that his funeral procession walk on the riches that he had amassed over several continents, and he wanted his arms hanging out of, I wasn't a coffin, they probably carried him on a bed, a stretcher. He wanted his arms outstretched to either side with his hands open, proving that you come into this world with nothing and you leave with nothing. And this is certainly true. There's a lot of things actually going on in the world. I've been talking about them endlessly, and unless you've had your head in the sand or in a really dark spot, you know what's going on. But I think what the current population of the Earth is, how many billions? What is it, 6-something billion? Even if the population of the Earth were to double overnight, there's still plenty of room for everybody. It's the case that due to human intelligence, which everybody's confused about this, and I was talking about this in live stream last night, neither you nor anybody in college or high school or otherwise was taught a distinction between intelligence and wisdom. And I'm not praising stupidity or ignorance here, obviously so. By the way, avidioragnosis doesn't mean ignorance specifically, not metaphysically. But intelligence always necessitatively carries with it evil. The Greeks had a word for this, they call it ananke. When this is present, that is present. When you actually also, too, don't have wisdom and you only have intelligence, you are actually breeding evil. Intelligence, of course, never brings peace. Facts overwhelm the minds of fools. A fool, of course, used to be the true insult of the ancient days, whatever language that was. It's somebody that didn't have any wisdom. It didn't matter how intelligent they were or were not. They were fools. They didn't understand natural order. Human beings aren't taught natural order anywhere today. They're not taught that in church, or certainly not taught it in college or high school. This is one of the great reasons why humanity is actually imploding, is that we're trying to bring up our test scores to get into a great college, and you don't learn anything in college. Nobody does, even if you end up with a double PhD in astrophysics or theoretical physics or anything else for that matter. Facts overwhelm the minds of fools, and this is a timeless thing. Evil is, by the way, intelligent but unwise. Anytime someone has intelligence, they actually magnify evil. You could be both ignorant and unintelligent, and of course fundamentally evil also. But the one thing, and nobody talks about this, that all these, absolutely astronomically evil people throughout history had in common is that they're incredibly intelligent and also too unwise. And that's a dangerous concoction. Intelligence breeds evil. It breeds greed, insanity, envy, desire, and regret. There are a lot of analogies that the ancients used to draw with talking about swords and steel. Tempered steel without a high carbon core. Like the samurai swords actually have two different types of steel. It's actually tacoed or sandwiched with a stiffer steel around a flexible core. Or do I have that vice versa? It's a flexible taco and a stiff core. No, I think it's actually a flexible core and a stiff outer shell on the samurai swords. Ignorant, evil people are never in conflict against themselves. And talking about spiritual polarization and the quest for utopia, humanity seems to, well, they're not taught this at all. You're not taught this. Nobody's taught this. This is so fundamentally important. It's not going to get you a better job, but it makes life so much better when you understand things fundamentally, that the desire for the countless things we're taught to actually reach for don't make us happy. Now, it's true, I would be a lot happier if I didn't have to work 7 days a week and I could actually take a long vacation, but humans actually have to have a purpose. All the talk about artificial intelligence actually destroying jobs, and it will destroy a lot of jobs, specifically programmers. AI has already been proven to reprogram itself to make itself operate better. It will absolutely destroy any programmer's job. People say, well, you're going to have programmers to program the AI. Well, that's true, but that's super small and extremely minuscule compared to the amount of people, endless thousands of people that are out there programming. If human beings don't have a purpose, their soul starts to rot. Kind of like somebody that's, in the big house in jail for the rest of their life. Unless they give themselves purpose therein, their soul literally starts to rot on the vine. On the vine, of course, would be the existential persona non grata, the physical meat suit connected thereof. And there's so many things that are going bad these days. This is an artificial human evolution that is not in line with natural order. Either someone transcends once they reach a level of intelligence and they realize that intelligence can't go any further, and the desire and the acquisition of countless things. We've all wanted things in life, like, ooh, if I only had that, it'd make me happier. I actually know more than a few rich people, and they can do anything, go anywhere, but all the ones I know, unless they actually have purpose in their lives, are extremely miserable. This is not the thing to seek for. This idea of utopia, and they're going to make more money, most of which goes to the government and taxes, it's just not possible. It's not going to fulfill us. Only true fulfillment is subjective synthesis, and that's retraction away from all the desires and things that we want. And speaking about spiritual polarization, since it's completely tied to utopia and actually gaining wisdom, once again, the fool is never in conflict with himself. Rather, these people that actually have growing wisdom become spiritually polarized. There's exactly identical passages, except a different person in the Bible regarding Jesus' conflict with the devil. Not that there's a literal spiritual or psychophysical or otherwise, personification of true evil. But Jesus' conflict with Satan is his own conflict within himself. Spiritual polarization due to wisdom causes separation. You know, like chocolate milk? Not that I drink chocolate milk. I used to when I was younger. I loved chocolate milk. If you let it sit for a while, or countless other things will start to separate. Same is true of like my almond butter in the kitchen there. You got to stir it up because the oil starts to actually separate. That's not polarization, but the same thing actually happens to and of any living human being, who has intelligence and is able to think reflectively. As they grow in wisdom, the actual persona non grata that's connected with the meat suit, actually like the cashew or almond butter, the oil starts to separate out from the nut butter itself. They're both basically nut butter if you stir them together, but they start to separate, and you have this conflict. This is true of people that have actually had deep spiritual visions, whether it be Jakob Boehme, Plotinus, Porphyry, Syrianus, on and on and on and on. Is that these people, become highly unpleasant souls relative to themselves. I was going to say some other words, but I'm trying to be more PC. The same conflict, and Christians think that this is a literal conflict between Jesus and the devil in the desert, where he's perpetually tempted. That's not what's going on. That's spiritual polarization. The exact same thing happens, not word for word, and it's not in the desert, between Gautama and Mara. Buddhists, the same as Christians, and there are many parallels. There's not just Buddhist examples and Christian examples. So-called Buddhists, they literally think that there's this evil incarnate being. Mara is basically the Pali word for Satan, right? In conflict with him, he's being tempted by another individual. No, it's one and the same person, but it's really not. They've actually taken metaphysical literalism regarding two different beings, and that's true. You have the one being that feeds off the psychophysical and is a living entity itself. This would be the Jivatman, which is roughly translated means the life force soul. That would be, the living soul. The waters of the living soul and the consciousness thereof, versus the transcendent soul. Wisdom necessitatively causes spiritual polarization. Every true master, Sanyasin, some of these Christian monastic recluses, there's endless examples all over the world through ancient history of countless different religions. Oh God, he's such a conflicted, so he's just always in so much suffering. It's like the guy has wisdom. There is actually now a separation. Within one body, you basically have two radio stations fighting for dominance. You have the broadcast, which is that which comes out of the speaker. That would be analogous to, the adversary, the great evil, which has a beginning in time and an end in time. Is that conflict with the signal? That would be the conflict. In the case of a person of wisdom, there's actually separation and delineation between the transcendent self, which would be analogous to the signal, crudely, and the immanent broadcast. And of course, the broadcast would be relative consciousness and the psychophysical, consubstantial construct thereof. Now, an evil person is in no way, shape, or form conflicted. And of course, evil always ripens upon such ignorant people, and ignorance always bites somebody in the boo-boo in the end. But until it does bite them, they're not conflicted. People that identify with and as the meat suit and as the psychophysical are not under any separation. There's no degree of difference between the chocolate additive in the milk and the milk itself. It's all one. It's like well-shaken chocolate milk. You don't see any chocolate there. Well, you do, kind of. You don't see milk or just milk or just chocolate, you see chocolate milk as a singular homogeneous entity. Ignorance breeds homogeneity, and it makes life peaceful, but ultimately it'll bite you in the end. This quest for utopia necessitates one embrace ignorance and identify with the meat suit and identify themselves as the psychophysical, or undergo spiritual polarization, and that, of course, is the rough road. The rough road is not the easy one, but it always culminates in the better destination. But people being short-sighted, they're not at all interested in that. I mean, let's be honest with each other. Nobody wants the hard road. Why does it have to be hard? Shouldn't wisdom be peaceful? Well, it is. But the spiritual polarization, you actually have two living entities occupy. This is almost truly, and not an absolute literalism regarding possession, where it is a literal, autonomous, separate entity that takes possession of an already possessed psychophysical being. That's a different case. But this is a self-inflicted possession where there is separation and degrees of separation between the immanent self and the transcendent self. Every wise person throughout history has had to undergo this tumultuous, hell on earth, because there is separation occurring between that which is not essence and that which is essence. Just like the oil and the almond butter start separating. My almond butter in the other room. Ignorant people don't have this issue. They're completely at peace and completely mixed, and there's absolute spiritual homogeneity in them. But it always ripens in a bad form. It always ends up destroying them. The rough road where spiritual polarization exists always culminates in perfection if it's actually brought to fruition, and the other one just ends in death. You can be happy and go through that short-term gain for long-term loss, or vice versa. So Jesus in the desert, being tempted by the great evil is not literal, but every Christian takes it that way. Jesus was tempted in the desert. It's like, no, he wasn't. It was him against himself. But that's not true. There were two individuals. There was the psychophysical Jesus made of flesh and blood, and there was the transcendent one. Christians mess that up, but that's okay, because the Buddhists mess it up in exactly the same way. They take it literally. Gautama was tempted by Mara. Look at this passage. And there are countless passages like that. And it's identical to the ones where Jesus was tempted in the desert by the devil. Ignorant evil people are never in conflict as against themselves. They're completely mixed and homogeneous. Have homogeneity of spirit, It's unfortunate, but necessitatively the case, just as magnetism is force by definition, that the body requires force. The soul requires itself. Self-proximity, of course, is wisdom. And if you think about that for 10 minutes in the shower, and it's just so simple, and I'm going to repeat it again, you'll see how true it is. The body requires force for sustainment. The soul only requires itself. What people cleave to determines their future. This is why it is so extremely ignorant that people ask about free will. Free will only exists potentially, not actually. The genetics of an acorn are exactly identical to the genetics of a large oak tree, except one is actualized and the other one is not. That's why you can't get lumber out of an acorn. You can get like 1,000 board foot of lumber out of a bunch of oak trees, but you can't get any board foot of lumber out of, a gigantic, house full of acorns. They're both exactly the same. People say, well, it's the same. We're all equal in spirit. That's like, saying water is water is water, so why don't you drink out of the toilet like the dog does? Well, I don't get what you're saying. It's like, well, you said we're all equal in spirit. That is true, but that's what's potential. People don't have actualized that which is potential. This is why any debate about whether humans have free will or not is completely ignorant. It's unfortunately the case that the existential self of flesh and blood, which is built on force, necessitates force to maintain itself. People have to make choices on what they do or don't do in life. I'm not interested in force, but I'm always prepared to bring it to bear. And this is the case. I'm not prepared to have a fire, but there's a fire extinguisher over there and a fire extinguisher over there. This is the people that make wise declarations about natural order, human greed, ignorance, and desire, and their great capacity for evil. Some people live in a self-inflicted false utopia. They just go around every day, with gumdrops and unicorns in their head, and, when natural order, squats on top of their head, they're completely shocked. People that live like that, some people make it through life, their entire life like that, but it's not wise, and it's not a way to live, but people should do however they feel they must. Being prepared for countless contingencies has always been and always will be the wisest plan. This idea that, people think this utopia that's coming, universal income, free health care, it's never going to work. This idea that, we're all going to sit back in our chairs and have robots stuff bonbons in our mouth while we watch TV. I mean, that destroys the soul. Human beings actually have to have purpose. Rotting of the soul is a horrible thing. I've seen people, and you have as well, with all the money in the world, all the looks, all the opportunities. They could take a 2-year vacation in Tahiti if they wanted to. And they're so miserable. And we look at them, it's like, oh my God, how could they be that way? The answer to that is really simple. Human beings have to have purpose, and all the intelligence in the world and all the money in the world will never ever compensate for the fruit of what wisdom actually brings to bear. That's the only peace and rest and utopia in life, not that there is any utopia in life, because there never can be. We have to realize who we are in and of ourselves and realize what's important. And I know you're going to say, well, it's family and kids and good job, and well, that's conventionally true, but that's not what's best in life. What's best in life is seeing beyond what is life, what it is, why it is, and how it is, and how not to get caught in this bottomless pit of bear traps that humanity is stuck in. Once again, and it's undeniable, if every human being on earth lived to be 200 years old, had a beautiful spouse or husband and 2 kids and didn't have to work and free food, and you just punch in, I think we should have steaks today, and you just punch in whatever you want and the food gets delivered. All of humanity would rot. That's your idea of utopia? Some people's idea of utopia is that when they pass on, they're going to be up in the pearly gates and sitting on clouds and eating milk and honey all day long. The definition of hell sounds like to me? The definition of hell sounds like a... what are you going to eat the milk and honey with? Another body? Are you going to get the body you had when you're an old person or when you were a baby? It's just completely preposterous. It's like, what's the definition of hell? Maybe being stuck in heaven, eating milk and honey all day long. Day after day after day, millennium, all eternity. I'm just going to sit there and eat milk and honey for all eternity. What, you got no purpose? No purpose? I don't have to have any. I don't have to work anymore. How do people not see the stupidity of this? That's not utopia. You're not going to find, nobody is going to find utopia either here on earth or in some sort of abstract fantasy land made up by, ignorant men to keep other ignorant men in line. If you act really well and lead a good life, you're going to have milk and honey in heaven for all eternity. Geez, that sounds like hell far more than it sounds like heaven. People, and utopia is not here and now. Some sort of existential materialist would say, well, it's all about the here and now. Well, that's not the answer either. We all have to have purpose and we all have to seek wisdom. That's the only truth. That's the only thing that brings rest, because wisdom is rest and rest is wisdom. Everybody should ultimately want rest, but rest is not an acquisition of things, and it's certainly not an intelligence, and it's not, you know, having a forever body eating milk and honey for all eternity. Every utopia that every human has in mind is actually the definition of hell and suffering. People say, what is true utopia? You know, being in Tahiti, you know, being force-fed tasty morsels of food. For what? For all eternity? You can't even take a week of that. You'd be screaming to get out after a week of that. Well, maybe 2 weeks. What is it that people are looking for? You know, the wife, the kids, you know, the big check that comes in every week or every 2 weeks. These things are not the answer, but we're told they're the answer by schools, the evil GOVT, who is fundamentally evil. 99% of humanity is on a wheel like a rat, chasing after something. Kind of like the old dog chasing after the bumper. Even if it caught the bumper, it wouldn't know what to do with it. I've seen people that have it all, and they look hollow and dead inside because they have to have purpose, but above all of that, they have to have wisdom. If you can't have wisdom because you're not smart enough to even go after it, actually requires some intelligence to go after wisdom. You know, what do you got? You got nothing. I've seen the hollow eyes, you know, the dead eyes behind the eyes that lie. Wearing a Rolex, living the fancy, it's just their eyes are hollow. We all want that, and I'm always screeching about taking a nice vacation, you know, for a month or something. And that would be nice, especially after working so much recently. But can't be the answer, and it's not the answer. Humanity needs to wake up. Tell me what you think. I read every comment. Once again, I apologize for being away for so long. I've been so radically busy, it's just literally taken a hunk out of me. But apparently I've lost like 28 pounds or so. I need to obviously lose a lot more than that, but it's a start. Thank you so much. Lux Veritas.